Okay, let's get the chair. All right. You want to continue with this witness then?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. We'll now play volume 2 of Mr. Carino's deposition, which is the questioning from counsel for Mr. Depp.
Okay, thank you.
You're aware that this litigation involves a dispute between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, correct?
Correct.
And you know both of those individuals, correct?
Correct.
Who did you meet first?
Amber.
When did you meet her?
I don't know exactly when, but probably within the first few years of being at CAA.
Okay. So can we, as an estimate, say 2005, 2006 time frame?
Sure. I don't actually know, but sure.
But it was pretty early on at your career at CAA.
Correct.
And describe for me the events of your meeting her.
She was represented theatrically at the time by an agent named Warren Zavala, who has since left CAA, and he brought her down to my office because he wanted me to represent her with him, specifically in the commercial space.
And what do you mean represent her in the commercial space?
Help identify business opportunities for her with brands.
Okay. So not as an actor?
Correct.
And did you take on that representation?
I did.
And at some point in time, you did consider her a friend, as in addition to you two working together. Is that right?
Yes.
And in that regard, did you and her do anything social?
Yes.
And can you describe for me generally what types of activities you two would do together as friends?
We would go to dinner, go to events together, just hang out at each other's residences.
And at some point in time, did you consider Mr. Depp a friend?
Yes.
And how did that relationship evolve? And I'm just talking about you and Mr. Depp becoming friends.
I spent a fair amount of time with both of them together, and at some point started to spend time with him on my own as well.
I see. And at some point in time, did Mr. Depp become a good a friend to you as Ms. Heard? I'm sorry. Let me re-ask that also. Did you consider, at some point in time, did you consider Mr. Depp a friend to the same degree you considered Ms. Heard a friend?
Yes.
And at some point, let me ask you, at some point in time, did you represent Mr. Depp professionally?
Yes.
And can you explain to me how how it came to you representing Mr. Depp professionally?
Johnny asked me to represent him.
And when you began representing Mr. Depp, did you continue representing Ms. Heard?
Yes.
And do you recall who Mr. Depp's agent was prior to you?
He was represented at another talent agency, UTA.
Do you still work for Mr. Depp?
I do not.
Do you recall when you stopped working for Mr. Depp?
Within the past 2 years.
And can you describe the circumstances of you no longer working for Mr. Depp?
He left CAA to follow an agent who left CAA to become part of a founding group in a new management company.
And who is that person?
Jack Wiggum.
Was Mr. Wiggum ever affiliated with CAA?
Yes.
Okay. And say that when Jack Wiggum departed CAA, Johnny went with him?
Yes.
Okay. And when Mr. Depp left CAA, did you remain friends with him?
No.
Okay. Well, I should probably first ask, at some point in time, did your friendship with Mr. Depp end?
Yes.
And when was that?
I would say at the time he left CAA.
And did him leaving CAA have something to do with the end of the friendship?
I don't know.
Are you still friends with Miss Heard?
No.
And when did that friendship end?
Probably when the legal disputes started.
And what legal dispute are you referring to? This one?
I'm not sure which one was first, but one of the disputes between Johnny and Amber.
Okay. But your friendship with, you're not referring to their divorce, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So you remain friends with both of them through their divorce. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Although you're no longer friends with Mr. Depp, do you have any animosity towards him?
I do not.
And same question with respect to Miss Heard. Although you're not friends with her any longer, do you have any animosity towards her?
I do not.
Do you recall when it is the last time you spoke with Miss Heard?
I do not.
Would it have been around the same time that your friendship ended with her?
I would assume so.
Exhibit 16.
No, Mr. Carino, you'll see at the bottom here, and I don't know if you can see it. If you see at the bottom, it has a bait stamp number under the yellow tag, CC00070.
Yes.
Do you recognize this document? And take your time if you need to review it.
Yes.
Okay. And Do you understand this to be a true and authentic copy of email exchange in which you were involved?
I believe so.
Okay. And you'll see it's dated January 11th, 2018, and the subject is WME. Do you know what is your understanding of what WME is?
William Morris Endeavor.
And what is that?
It's another talent agency.
Okay. And you've read this email from Ms. Hurd to you, correct?
Correct.
So at this point in time, was she a close friend of yours?
Yes.
And ultimately, did she leave CAA?
Yes.
And it was at this time?
Yes.
During the entire time you represented Ms. Hurd, did Mr. Depp ever interfere with your representation of Ms. Hurd?
No.
Did he ever ask you to do anything with respect to her career?
Not that I can recall.
Exhibit 17.
Now, Mr. Carino, this particular document was not produced by you. You'll see that at the bottom here. The date stamp indicates ALH. That means it was produced by Ms. Hurd. And this appears to be a text exchange between you and her. It's about a page and a half. If you could take the time to read it, and then I will ask you questions about it.
I read it.
And you'll see at the top, Mr. Carino, that it's dated July 14th, 2016. Based on that date and based on reading this text exchange, at this point in time, were you close friends with both Mr. Depp and Ms. Hurd?
Yes.
And having read the text exchange, do you believe this to be a true and correct representation of the exchange?
Yes.
And to be authentic in that regard?
Yes.
Now, you start the text exchange by indicating JD just surfaced. What is the JD reference?
Johnny Depp.
And she says, I saw Laurel yesterday. Who is Laurel?
Laurel's a therapist.
Do you know her full name?
Laurel Anderson.
Did you independently know Laurel?
Yes.
Did you have anything to do with Laurel seeing either Ms. Hurd or Mr. Depp?
Yes.
And can you explain that to me, please?
I introduced them all.
And what was the purpose of you introducing her to them?
They needed help.
And can you explain to me in more detail what you mean by that?
I think it was at a time where they needed somebody to help mediate the difficulties they were having.
And what do you mean by difficulties?
The strains on their relationship.
And in that regard, did you have conversations with Ms. Hurd about the state of her relationship with Mr. Depp?
Yes.
I'm trying to determine for how long a period of time did Ms. Hurd have conversations with you about the state of her relationship with Mr. Depp? Can you give me a time frame?
I would say she talked to me about the state of their relationship from the beginning until the end.
The entire time you knew her? I'm sorry, the entire time you considered her a friend?
Yes.
Okay. And how about Mr. Depp? Did you have conversations with him about the state of his relationship with Ms. Hurd?
Yes.
And were those ongoing during the entire time you were friends with him?
Yes.
You say they both confided in you in that regard?
Yes.
So back to this text exchange. Where my cursor is, Ms. Hurd says to you, yeah, she said that Johnny and I need to talk directly. Do you know who do you know who Ms. Hurd's referring to there?
Laurel.
That was your understanding after reading this?
Yes.
And then you ask her, do you want to do something tomorrow? She says, yeah. She says, IDP, I do. You say, ha, okay. And then you say, what is safe to do? Do you want to come to my place for dinner? What did you mean by what is safe to do?
It meant avoiding paparazzi.
Okay. And then she says, it's so fucked up. I just want to tell him that what they are telling him isn't true. What was your understanding of what she meant by that sentence?
I don't recall.
Mr. Garino, while she's doing that, at the outset of this deposition, I asked you if you recall being deposed about a year ago in this case, and you said yes. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. What I'm going to show you now is the transcript, a portion of the transcript from that deposition. And who is Mr. Bruckheimer?
Jerry Bruckheimer is the producer of the Pirates franchise.
And who is Mr. Wiggum?
Jack Wiggum was an agent at CA who worked with Johnny.
Okay. And who is Mr. Lord?
Brian is one of the managing partners of CAA and also worked on Johnny Depp.
And what was your understanding of why the Pirate 6 job was not offered to Mr. Depp?
Leo, you're asking my opinion?
Yes.
Because of the accusations that Amber had made.
And what I'm about to show you, Mr. Carino, is a article in the Washington Post authored by Ms. Hurd. You're going to notice that the article would be presented sideways. So you'll have to tilt your head a bit to review it.
Exhibit 19.
Do you, first, Mr. Carino, why don't you take control and just scroll through the document. It's just a couple of pages.
Is this the top of the next page?
Yeah, when there's a jump like that, it's just at the top of the next page.
Okay.
Mr. Carino, have you seen this document before?
Yes.
Do you know who wrote this document?
Yes.
Who wrote this document?
Amber.
Amber Heard?
Yes.
And do you see there on this first page of the document, it actually indicates that it's written by Amber Heard on December 18th, 2018?
Yes.
And do you understand that this document was authored by Ms. Heard and published on December 18th, 2018?
Yes.
And do you recall reading it at the time it was published?
No.
Mr. Carino, I'm showing you an email exchange in which you were involved. It's just this one page. I'll blow it up so you can review it. Take a second to review it, please.
Okay.
And let's start at the bottom of this. Well, do you see at the top that the email Ray line is entitled Johnny Depp's Jack Sparrow won't return in new Pirates of the Caribbean movie?
Yes.
And this email exchange was on December 20th, 2018, correct?
Correct.
And do you recall that the article you just read published by Ms. Heard was published on December 18th, 2018, 2 days before this?
Yes.
Now, if you go to the bottom of this email, do you see there is this link to an article?
Yes.
And it says URL defense, it says movieweb.com.
Yes.
Mr. Carino, what I put up next to the email exchange that we've been discussing is an article dated December 20th, 2018. Okay. So this article is dated December 20th, 2018. The email sent to you by Robin Baum is that same day, December 20th, 2018, correct?
Yes.
Who is Ms. Baum?
Johnny's publicist.
Okay. And she's sending this article to you, is that right?
Yes.
And then in response, you say, were we told this officially from Disney? And she responds, Jack Wiggum responds, no. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Sure. So you testified just a few minutes ago that it was your opinion that Mr. Depp lost the Pirates 6 movie because of Ms. Heard's allegations. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Allegations of abuse, correct?
Yes.
And is this a demonstration of when Disney made that decision to not hire Mr. Depp for Pirates 6?
Yes.
Exhibit 22.
Did you ever see Mr. Depp physically abuse Ms. Heard?
No.
Did Ms. Heard ever tell you that she had been physically abused by Mr. Depp?
No.
Did Mr. Depp ever tell you that he had physically abused Ms. Heard?
No.
Did you ever witness any injuries on Ms. Heard that would indicate that she was physically abused?
No.
Now, again, this is a few months after the filing of the divorce papers and the TRO, and Ms. Heard states to you, I'll call you right back, sorry. And you say, okay. She says, is it too late to call? And you say, just finishing dinner, we'll call you as soon as we walk out within 20. And she says, please tell him I love him. Is that an accurate reading of the text exchange so far?
Yes.
Do you know if at this time, based on your relationship with Ms. Heard and Mr. Depp, whether Ms. Heard wanted to reconcile with Mr. Depp?
Yes.
It's your understanding that she did?
Yes.
Did Ms. Heard based on your personal friendship with Ms. Heard, close personal friendship with Ms. Heard, would you say that she confided in you?
Yes.
And what about Mr. Depp?
Yes.
Mr. Carino, at some point in time, after Ms. Heard filed those divorce papers in May of 2016, did she make any requests of you to intervene in the relationship between her and Mr. Depp?
What do you mean by intervene?
Assist in, let's start with assist in communications between the two.
Objection. Same objections.
Can you explain to me what transpired in that regard? Walk me through it.
At some point around that time, she wanted me to arrange for them to get together in person.
And what did you do after that was requested of you by Ms. Heard?
I talked to Johnny about it.
What happened after that?
He was reluctant at first and then agreed.
And then what happened after that?
I mean, this is a long time ago, but I remember there was a fair amount of discussion about the TRO and how we would deal with that, because nobody wanted Johnny accused of violating the TRO as an outcome of that meeting. And I don't remember exactly what we did, but Amber at some point warranted that she would never accuse him of violating the TRO to do the meeting, and I set the meeting up.
So just so I understand, you set the meeting up at the request of Ms. Heard?
Objection.
Yes.
And as part of you setting up, she told you that it didn't matter. I'm trying to understand what was the issue with respect to the TRO?
My understanding of a restraining order, at least at the time, was that he couldn't go within a certain distance of her.
Okay. And what was her suggestion with respect to that issue in connection with her wanting to meet with him?
She promised me and told me to relay to him that she would never accuse him of violating the restraining order as a result of agreeing to meet her. And I believe, but I don't recall exactly, there were conversations with both sides legally, I believe at the time, to make it transparent to everybody that this was happening.
Okay. And then what happened next?
I arranged the meeting. Johnny was in San Francisco on tour, and I arranged to borrow a friend's house, and Amber and I flew to San Francisco and drove to the house, and Johnny showed up a few hours later.
And did the two of them meet
Yes,
in the same room?
they sat outside.
Okay. How close to each other were they?
Inches away from each other.
And how long were they out there talking? For how long were they out there talking?
Several hours.
Did you, although you were out there, were you in a position where you could see them through a window or otherwise?
Yes.
At some point in time, the conversation ended, correct?
Correct.
And what happened after that?
I received a call or a text from Steve, whose house it was, and he notified me that he would be coming back to the house within the next hour or so. And I told Johnny and Amber, and we decided to rent a hotel room in San Francisco so that they could continue to talk.
And did that in fact happen?
Objection.
Yes.
And at some point in time, you left that house, correct, to go to San Francisco?
Yes.
And was it the three of you?
No. Johnny had security with him, and we talked about the fact that it wouldn't be a good idea for them to be seen together. So Johnny left with his security in his car, and I believe Amber and I took an Uber.
And what happened after that?
We all met at the hotel room.
And do you know what happened after that?
They started arguing.
And do you recall any details of the argument?
No.
And for how long was this argument had in a hotel room?
Yes.
Did you witness the entire discussion, or did you leave at some point?
I left the next morning at 5 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning.
And Mr. Carino, I'm showing you emails that were produced by you. First, the bottom of the first page, it starts at the bottom of the first page. The string above it was redacted. And you'll see that it starts on August 7th, 2017. Do you see that?
August 7th, 2017, yes.
Having read it, can you determine who you're speaking with in this text exchange?
Amber?
Oh, hang on. Let me ask you this. Do you know whether or not Ms. Heard ever had a relationship with Mr. Elon Musk?
Yes.
She did?
Yes.
So again, it's dated August of 2017. And she says, dealing with breakup, I hate when things go public. See, I'm so sad. Having reviewed the document again, do you have an understanding of what she's referencing there?
I believe she's referring to breaking up with Elon.
You say, seems like a press release. You weren't in love with him, and you told me 1,000 times you were just filling space. What are you saying there?
I'm saying, why would you be sad if you weren't in love with him to begin with?
And by him, you're referring to who?
Elon.
Okay. And at this point in time, were you still close friends with Ms. Heard?
Looks like that's the case at that time, yes.
And did she still, at this point in time, did she confide in you about her relationship?
Yes.
Okay. And you respond, she responds, I know, but I wanted time to grieve and recover in my own time. Is she still referring to Mr. Musk there? Do you know? Your understanding.
I don't know whether she's referring to Johnny or to Elon in that line.
Okay. In this point in time, do you know what her feelings were? What was your understanding? At this point in time, what was your understanding based on your experience with her? What was your understanding of her relationship with Mr. Depp?
I don't believe there was a relationship at that point.
And you say, and you got that. No, she says, I hate that yet again a man lets me fall on the spikes by myself. You ask, how so? She says, oops. Meaning they are mad at me for leaving them and put things like this out there. You say, sorry. she says like that, you say, you could avoid all this if you stop dating uber famous people. You can be with a big man who isn't famous. What were you relating to her there?
I believe what I was saying was, if you don't like being in the press about your personal life, then don't date people that are famous.
Sure. You indicated that she moved on immediately after Johnny Depp to date Elon Musk. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay, sure. Do you have an understanding one way or another whether Ms. Heard and Mr. Musk were in fact dating at the time of the San Francisco reconciliation that she asked you to set up?
I don't know whether they were dating, but they had definitely spent time together.
Do you know how long after the San Francisco attempted reconciliation you gained the understanding that Elon Musk and Ms. Heard were in fact dating?
I don't know exactly how long, but not long after.
Do you know who or what was your understanding of who she was referring to when she was said, "Here, I love him"?
Johnny.
Based on this exchange, did you have an understanding at this time whether Ms. Heard wanted to reconcile with Mr. Depp?
I believe she did.
And at this point in time, she was still a close personal friend of yours, correct?
Yes.
And at this point in time, did she consider you a confidant in your understanding?
I think, yes.
Okay, just to authenticate this document again, Mr. Carino, do you see that it's referenced at the bottom, date stamped CC, indicating that you produced this document?
Yes.
And having read this, do you perceive this as a true or copy of a text exchange between you and Ms. Heard?
Yes.
Okay. And I will, and you see at the very top here, it's dated August 16th, 2017.
Yes.
And Ms. Heard states to you, "I've written so many notes. Can you give him one? I don't know how or where to start. There's no way to begin. And all I have to say, but I have so many. Finally, I am single, clear in my heart and mind. I just want him to know I loved him and that I am sorry." Do you have an understanding of who Ms. Heard is referring to here?
Yes.
And who is Ms. Heard referring to in this text?
Johnny.
And what is she asking you to do here?
She was asking me to deliver a letter that she was writing to him.
Oh. And did she also want you to, and it says, "and that I am sorry." What was your understanding of what she was asking you to do there, if anything?
I believe that was all in reference to getting him a handwritten letter that she was writing or trying to write.
Was it your understanding at the time of this text exchange, August 24, 2017, that Ms. Amber was attempting to reconcile with Mr. Depp?
I believe so.
Okay. And I know this may sound repetitive, but on August 20, at the time of this text, on August 24th, 2017, you and her were still close personal friends, correct?
I believe so.
There's not much here at all, Mr. Carino, but I did want to confirm that this was a document produced by you, correct, based on the date stamp on the bottom?
Yes.
And do you see it's dated September 27th, 2017?
September 23rd.
Oh, you're right. My apologies. It's dated September 23rd, 2017. And it's a text to you that says, "God, I miss him." Do you have an understanding of who Ms. Heard is referring to there?
Yes.
And who's that?
Johnny.
And do you see at the bottom, the date of the text is June 9th, 2018?
Yes.
Okay. And it says, I text him happy birthday. Do you know who sent that and who the him is?
I assume this is from Amber, and she's talking about Johnny.
You've had a chance to review the whole document. Perino, what does this appear to be?
It appears to be the communications around the time that we set up the meeting in San Francisco.
And who are these communications between?
Me and Johnny.
Okay. And this first bubble, can you tell if the blue is you or Mr. Depp?
I think the blue is me.
Sure. Earlier in your deposition, at the very outset, I was asking you about your representation of individuals at CAA. You indicated that you represent individuals that are both actors and musicians. Would you consider Mr. Depp in that pool?
Yes.
And you represented, or CAA represented him both in connection with his acting endeavors and his involvement with the vampires?
Yes.
And was Mr. Depp's participation in Hollywood Vampires lucrative?
No.
Do you know whether or not it was something Mr. Depp enjoyed?
Yes.
Plaintiff calls Laura Wasser by deposition, Your Honor. W-A-S-S-E-R. Thank you.
Will you please state your name and address for the record?
Laura Allison Wasser, Wasser, Cooperman and Mandels, Suite 800, 2049 Century Park East, Los Angeles, California, 90049.
Thank you. What is your occupation?
I'm an attorney at law.
And how long have you been an attorney?
26 years.
You represented Mr. Depp in the divorce against Amber Heard, is that correct?
Yes.
And you are here under subpoena?
Yes.
Your practice has primarily been focused on domestic relations in California, is that correct?
Yes.
Are you a member of any bar other than California?
No.
During the period 2012 to 2016, was California a no-fault state with respect to divorce?
The answer is that California was a no-fault state during that period.
During the period 2012 to 2016, was California a community property state with respect to the division of assets in a divorce?
Yes.
And what does that mean to you?
California is a community property state, and what that means to me is that assets which were earned or created during the course of the marriage, absent some other theory of law applied, be divided equally.
And what do you mean by absent some theory or law applied?
I'm sorry, Elaine, what was the question? Oh, a theory of law. When I say a theory of law, I mean if there's a premarital agreement, if there's some other, it's not completely blanket community property. There may be things that were earned from a separate property source that would not be considered community property. So I was just trying to provide, for the record, some exceptions to what would be considered community property and therefore divided equally.
Now, if someone alleges domestic violence or abuse against their spouse, would that change the amount they would otherwise be entitled to under community property laws?
No.
In obtaining a temporary restraining order, what is your understanding of the process?
The moving party files generally with 24 hours notice to the person who is being accused of domestic violence a declaration and forms with the court and requests a temporary domestic violence restraining order. That will generally last no longer than a 21-day period when the defendant is able to make his or her arguments as to why such a restraining order would be inappropriate.
And the temporary restraining order, can it be continued?
Yes.
When did you first begin representing Mr. Depp relating to his divorce with Amber Heard?
I believe it was in December of 2015.
I'm going to ask you to pull up document 1, Wasser document 1, and let's go ahead and label that as Wasser exhibit number 1. Ms. Wasser, I'm going to ask you to take a look at what has been marked as Wasser deposition exhibit number 1. It is a letter dated May 24, 2016. It's addressed to Jacob Bloom, and it says in remarriage of Depp. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, and it's from Samantha Spector, who indicates she's representing Amber Heard. As of the time of this letter, had you made known to Amber Heard or Ms. Spector or anyone else related to them that you represented Mr. Depp?
I don't believe so.
Did you receive a copy of this letter from someone?
I believe so. I think I've seen it before, so yes.
Did you receive this letter on or around May 24, 2016?
Okay, next page, please. Hang on. Yes, it was around that time.
Around May 24, 2016?
Yes.
Did you have any communications with Samantha Spector in connection with this letter?
Yes.
And when you say within days, could it have been the same day, May 24th, the next day, 25th?
Possibly.
I'm going to direct your attention to the next paragraph. It says, to this end, please have Johnny promptly sign and return by Friday, May 27, 2016, the enclosed notice of acknowledgement receipt form, confirming service of the summons, petition, law, case cover sheet, and blank response. Did you do that?
This letter was not directed to me, Elaine.
No, I understand it, but it was given to you, correct?
I believe so.
And you were representing Mr. Depp, correct?
Yes.
And Mr. Bloom did not represent Mr. Depp in connection with the divorce, correct?
Correct.
So once Mr. Bloom gave this to you, then did you represent Mr. Depp going forward in communications with Samantha Spector?
Once we received this letter, our firm took over with representation of Mr. Depp in the dissolution action. I cannot recall whether or not the request made was done by Friday, May 27th, but I believe that it was. Probably have that notice and acknowledgement of receipt somewhere with a date on it.
Now, the next section, I think, is something that you referred to earlier. It said, in addition, we are requesting on Amber's behalf the following. And it says appropriate pendente light support. Did you have any understanding of what that amount might be at the time that you saw this letter?
I did not have an understanding of what appropriate pendente lite support would be at that time.
Did you ask Samantha Spector?
I don't recall. I don't recall our specific communications regarding her requests.
Do you recall making any kind of counter to any of these items?
All I recall is that without any notice to us at 8:30 in the morning on the 27th, Samantha Spector and her client went into court and obtained a no notice ex parte restraining order.
Had you had any communications with Samantha Spector prior to her going into court on that Friday, May 27th?
Yes.
How many communications had you had with Ms. Spector following getting this letter and prior to her going into court at 8:30 on May 27, 2016?
I do not recall.
Do you have a recollection of whether any of the communications that you had with Ms. Spector between the receipt of this letter that's dated May 24, 2016, and Ms. Spector going into court on Friday, May 27, 2016, related in any way to requests on your behalf, on behalf of your client that you made?
No.
You recall having communications with Samantha Spector between May 24 and May 27. You can't recall how many, and you can't recall the specifics of those communications. Is that accurate?
It's not accurate.
And in what way? Please tell me.
I recall that we had communications between the 24th and probably the 26th. I doubt we spoke on the morning of the 27th before she went into court. I do not know the content of those communications, and I do not know how many communications were had.
Now, on the next paragraph, it has a proposal for private retired judicial officers. Ultimately, did you and Ms. Spector talk about using private retired judicial officers, whether it was the list she provided or any others?
I believe so, yes.
And what do you recall?
My recollection is that is in almost all of our cases, certainly those with high-profile clients, we would have liked to take it out of the system. Ms. Spector was not willing to do that with this case.
What do you recall Ms. Spector saying to indicate that she did not want to take it out of the public spectrum?
I don't recall her saying anything.
Okay. Now, after your understanding was that a CLETS DVTRO was in fact obtained on Friday, May 27, 2016 by Ms. Heard against Mr. Depp, correct?
That is my understanding.
After that, did there come a time that you or anyone at your law firm communicated with the Eastern Columbia Building concierge staff or management?
Was those the downtown lofts?
The penthouse lofts, yes. And if it's easier for you, everyone's been referring to the Eastern Columbia Building as ECB. Would that be helpful at all?
Sure.
Or we can, if you prefer to call them the penthouse loft building, that's fine too.
Now that we've identified them, I understand what you're talking about. We can call them whatever you'd like. Did someone from my firm speak with somebody at the at those buildings, yes.
And who from your firm spoke with someone at the buildings and when?
I believe either I did or my partner Samantha Klein or an associate who was also working on the case, Lisa Sutton from our firm. We also had co-counsel on the case. They may have been involved. As to when, I have to imagine it was sometime in June or July of 2016.
Now, you indicated either you or Samantha Klein or Lisa Sutton, and you also had co-counsel. Do you have a specific recollection of speaking with anyone at the ECB building?
I don't.
What were Samantha Klein's communications with the ECB building?
I don't know.
What were Samantha Klein's communication with the ECB building?
Okay.
And her answer was, I don't know.
Thank you.
What were Lisa Sutton's communications with the ECB building?
I don't know.
What were your co-counsel's communications with the ECB building? And when I say ECB building, I'm not talking about the structure. I'm talking about the individuals who worked there. And just so we're clear here, you don't recall any communications with the ECB building staff as well, correct?
You asked me if I had a specific recollection. I do not.
Do you have a general recollection?
I believe that at some point we subpoenaed the building's records of the video from the lobby and elevator areas. So I would imagine that the communications would have to do with those subpoenas.
Are you able to testify to any conversation you or anyone at your firm or your co-counsel had with the ECB building staff?
I am sure that there were conversations and communications regarding the production of the subpoenaed documents, review of the subpoenaed documents, their compliance with, I believe it was Ms. Spector's subpoena that was sent, our ability to review the videos, coordination of same. But I don't have a specific recollection of any communications.
Are you able to speak to whether there were any conversations between you, anyone at your law firm or your co-counsel, and ECB building personnel prior to your issuing the subpoena?
Also, I don't believe that the subpoena was issued by our firm. As you said.
So you don't have a recollection of a subpoena being issued on Mr. Depp's behalf for the ECB building surveillance tapes?
I don't know. I know there was one issued. I believe it was issued by Ms. Spector.
Let's talk about the videos that you just referred to from the ECB building staff. How did you and your firm or your co-counsel receive these videos?
I don't recall. I would imagine like a e-file or something like that.
Now, is it your recollection that there was just one e-file that contained all of the surveillance tapes?
I don't have a recollection as to whether it was 1 or 7 or what. I just don't know.
When you were talking about receiving the video surveillance footage on whatever, whether it was 1 file or 7 files, whether it was e-file or whatever, did you have any understanding that you were not provided the full amount that was requested, whatever the amount was?
No.
So you thought you received whatever you were supposed to receive, is that fair?
Yes.
What did you do with the actual surveillance video footage that you received?
I believe we kept it on the computer at least for the next couple of months in preparation for trial. I don't know where it is now.
That's my next question. Is there a time that you no longer possess the video surveillance footage that was sent to you by the ECB building?
I don't know.
Ms. Wasser, I'm going to ask you to take a look at what has been marked as Wasser Deposition Exhibit number 2, and it's a multi-page document, and so I'm going to scroll down a little bit, but you let me know if I'm going too fast here. It's dated June 3rd, and it's to Samantha Klein. She was working with you on the Depp case, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And it's from Samantha Spector, which you can see there, and we'll show you the signature later. And it's litigation hold preservation of information, including not limited to electronically stored information. Do you see that?
Yes.
Do you recall receiving this letter? And if you want me to scroll down and let you read each page, I'm happy to do that first.
I'm familiar with this letter. I recall receiving it.
And did you receive this letter before you received the surveillance footage from the ECB building?
I am not sure.
Well, I think you had indicated that you thought that it was in June or July that you received the surveillance footage. Is that still your best recollection?
Looking at the date and knowing the chronology of the case, it is my best estimate that we received this letter prior to the time that we received the video footage.
Ms. Wasser, what steps did you and your firm and co-counsel take to preserve the surveillance video footage of ECB from the time you received it going forward?
I think the absence of us doing anything to destroy the video footage would be the most I could testify regarding in terms of steps that we took to preserve the video footage.
Are you aware of any destruction of the video footage, the surveillance video footage from ECB up to the present?
No, we probably still have it.
Have you looked for it?
No.
Have you been asked to look for it?
No.
I'm going to ask you to take a look at what has now been marked as Wasser Deposition Exhibit number 3, and it's dated June 6, 2013, addressed to you, and it's from Charles Harder. Did you have an understanding that Mr. Harder also represented Amber Heard?
I did when I received this letter on June 6th.
Okay. And did you have an understanding that Mr. Harder was also asking you to preserve any evidence?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Wasser, I'm going to ask you to take a look at what has been marked as Wasser Deposition Exhibit number 4. It's dated June 6th as well, and it's to Charles Harder from your firm. And you are acknowledging receipt of the preservation demand letter from Ms. Heard as well as his, and you indicated we are fully aware of our obligations with respect to the preservation of evidence. Please rest assured that we intend to comply with the preservation demand and expect that Ms. Bird will do so as well. Do you recall saying that in this letter?
Yes,
And was this letter, in fact, from you to Mr. Harder?
it was.
Ms. Wasser, I'm going to ask you to take a look at what has been marked as Wasser Deposition Exhibit number 5. It's a letter dated June 21, 2016 to Samantha Spector, Charles Harder, and Leonard Levine, I think it's pronounced, remarriage of Depp. And it's from Samantha Klein. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
And you are copied on it. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay. And Ms. Klein worked with your law firm
Yes.
and represented Mr. Depp as well? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm going to go back up to the beginning to call your attention to a particular section. It says, this letter shall confirm the agreements we reached yesterday with respect to the pending domestic violence proceedings. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to go down to the media, press, and it says, neither party nor his or her respective counsel representatives or agents shall make any comments in the media or press pertaining to this dissolution action, the civil action pending against Doug Spinoza, and or any pending or future litigation between or involving the parties. Do you see that?
Yes.
All right. Does that accurately reflect the agreement that was made between the parties with respect to Amber Heard and Mr. Depp and communications with the press?
Yes.
Did you know Liz Walters?
Who?
Liz Walters?
Yes.
And who is she?
She is a reporter.
For?
I believe she works for her brother's online media outlet called The Blast.
Did you have any communications with Liz Walters during the Depp-Heard divorce?
I don't recall.
Did you have any communications with TMZ relating to the Depp-Heard divorce?
I don't recall.
Now, do you recall what the date was for the permanent TRO, temporary restraining order? Do you recall the date that you said that early on, 21 days after the temporary restraining order is typically the date that's set for the hearing for the defendant if they want to come in and oppose it, or if the petitioner wants to extend it? Do you recall what the first date was?
I don't, but I would imagine it was probably at some point in early June.
All right. And then do you recall that date being continued?
I do.
How many times?
At least twice, possibly 3 times. I think that the final date was at some point in August, and we settled right before then.
All right. Alan, can we bring up document number 7? Thank you, Alan. Ms. Wasser, I'm going to ask you to take a look at what has been marked as Wasser Exhibit number 7. It is dated August 5, 2016. It is to you from Samantha Spector. Do you see that?
Yes.
Do you recall, did you receive this document?
Doesn't it say at the top that it's protected under 1152?
It sure does. All I'm asking you is whether you received it. I'm not asking you about the substance.
I don't remember.
Do you have any reason to believe you did not receive it?
I don't.
Wasser, I'm going to ask you to take a look at what has been marked as Wasser Deposition Exhibit number 8. And it starts out with an email from Samantha Spector to Amber on August 6, 2016. Do you recall what was going on or around August 16 in divorce, in connection with the divorce?
Not specifically, no.
Do you know who Christian Carino is?
I do.
Okay, who is he?
He's an agent at a creative artist agency.
How long have you known Christian Carino?
I've known of Christian for maybe 10 years.
Were you aware that Mr. Carino was involved in organizing, if you will, or assisting Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard with their own meeting to try to resolve their case up in San Francisco?
Possibly. That sounds vaguely familiar.
Were you on the telephone at any point while Amber Heard and Johnny Depp were meeting to discuss attempted resolution of the issues during the summer of 2016?
What was your question? Was I on the telephone?
Yes. Were you on the telephone where Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard were in the hotel room and were talking?
No.
Were you ever on the telephone when Ms. Heard and Mr. Depp were together talking during the summer of 2016, no matter where they were?
On the telephone?
Yes.
No.
While he was with Ms. Heard and Ms. Heard was on speaker, and you were on speakerphone with the two of them?
No.
You recognize the name, I'm going to skip this here.
Do you recognize the name on what?
Joe Sweeney?
I do.
And who was he?
Joe Sweeney is a forensic accountant who specializes in family law forensic accounting, and he was Ms. Heard's forensic accountant in the Disso matter.
And was Edward White acting as the forensic accountant for Mr. Depp?
No.
Did Mr. White provide the documentation that was then submitted to Samantha Spector as counsel for Ms. Heard?
I believe it came from Mr. White's office. Also probably of note is the fact that Mr. Depp changed business management shortly before or during the course of the case, so it is possible that some of the documents came from predecessor business manager.
I'm going to show you what has been marked as Wasser Deposition Exhibit number 10, and I'm not going to ask you any specific questions, so I don't need you to have to review it in detail unless you'd like to. You're certainly welcome to spend as much time as you'd like on it. But I'm just going to go down to the end of it. And I'm going to ask if this is the deal point memorandum that you referred to that was finalized on August 15, 2016.
Since the parties' signatures appear at the bottom, as well as Ms. Spector's and mine, I believe that this is the deal point memorandum to which I was referring.
Okay. Is there any reason to believe that it is not the final deal point memorandum?
No.
Ms. Wasser, I'm going to ask you to take a look at what has been marked as Wasser Deposition Exhibit number 11. And it's a series of documents. An FL-150, for example, and then that's page 404, and then it goes into the next part, one of one. Just try to page through it for you just so you can see generally. Do you recognize this document?
Yes,
Could you tell me what it is, please?
it looks to be one of the parties, I guess Mr. Depp's, what we call in California, preliminary or perhaps final declaration of disclosure. It's just financial disclosure forms.
Ms. Wasser, I'm going to ask you if you can take a look at what has been marked as Wasser Exhibit number 12. And it's many pages. I think it's 50 total. Do you recognize this document?
Yes,
Can you tell me what it is?
parties related judgment for dissolution of marriage.
Is there a specific amount that was paid to Amber Heard as part of this divorce settlement and judgment for
Objection document. I'm sorry.
for her claims of domestic violence, including any claims of assault, battery, intentional or negligent infliction of emotional distress, libel, slander, and/or defamation?
I don't believe that we segregated out what the total amount was being paid for.
Did you make any effort to seal, S-E-A-L, the records in this case? And I'm referring to the case in front of us, the marriage or partnership of Amber Laura Depp and John Christopher Depp II, filed in Superior Court of California, County of Los Angeles.
When you say seal, do you mean by the court, to ask the court to seal the file?
Yes.
I don't believe so.
And why not?
We don't do that.
I'm going to ask you to take a look at what has been marked as deposition exhibit number 13. And this is a subpoena of you for this deposition. Did you receive that? Do you want me to scroll through it? Would you like to?
No, I believe that we received it.
All right. And you are testifying pursuant to this subpoena, correct?
I am.
I'm going to ask you to look at what has been marked as deposition exhibit number 14. And this is for the corporate designee of Wasser, Cooperman, and Mandos. You see that?
I do.
For today's deposition. Is it your understanding that you are the corporate designee on behalf of Wasser, Cooperman, and Mandos speaking today?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think given the hour, that'll be all the testimony that you hear today, okay? So we'll go ahead and recess for the day. Make sure you don't do any outside research and don't talk to anybody, and we'll see you tomorrow, okay? Get some good rest, all right? Thank you. Okay. And tomorrow, then we'll be starting with that other deposition. That's correct. And how long is that, or approximately? About 2.5 hours. So that'll take care of the morning, probably, for the most part. And then you have remote witnesses after that. Is that correct? Okay, so you can get me the contact information for those so we can get that taken care of. All right, just remember, we do plan accordingly, because I do need to take lunch between 1:30 and 2:30, because there's a graduation I have to speak at, so we're going to take care of that, okay? All right, thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right.